Before we start, for Todd Schmidt's benefit. Okay, if there's anybody that's on the recording that would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to call our meeting to order for April 12th, 2023. Roll call
Chris Elner,
here.
Nyla Fry,
Here.
Al Dassow,
Here.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Tricia Brown.
Here.
Okay, first item is minutes. Anybody see any problems? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
I move to approve the minutes. I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And ayes have it. And I will remind all of our commission members and future board members that their mic must be on green while they're speaking to pick it up on the microphone. All right, next, public comment. Think we're good. All right, since we have no guests in the audience tonight, is there anybody online tonight? Okay, then I don't need to refer to that. If somebody does come on, let me know. Business item discussion, recommendation to allocate a portion of final year of tax increment for TID number 3 to be used for the Affordable Housing Fund.
All
Tim?
right. Thanks, Chair Zellner. As noted on the brief cover sheet for this, TID 3 will be reaching the end of its life in a couple of months on June 5th of this year. The village will need a portion of the increment from the 2023 tax roll to meet all final obligations. Oh, hey, Jeff. Of the TIF district. Since the village does not need the entire year's worth of increment to be made whole, that will leave a balance. And this money could be returned to the jurisdictions or be used to populate the Affordable Housing Fund with extra dollars. So also as noted, there's some information and you have this in hard copy and I'll put this up on the screen. And what you're seeing in a moment, there we go. What you're seeing, again, before you in hard copy and then up on the screen is the projected remaining balance for TID 3 after all of the obligations are paid, which is about $775,000. And then in the next group, it's the dollar amount that would be returned to the taxing jurisdictions if we choose not to use the dollars for Affordable Housing Fund. And then on the lower portion of the screen would be the potential new balance if the dollars would be allocated. So really, we're looking for direction from this body to make any recommendations to the village board as to the use of those funds. Would you be in favor of that or not? The other thing that is before you in hard copy is simply an example of the resolution that would go to the village board. This was the original one that was created for the extension of TID 2. So the form of the adopting resolution would look similar to that. So staff is recommending approval, but obviously this is for your discussion.
Okay, so I'll just throw the first question out. So has the school district, MATC or Dane County, are they aware of us and what we're doing with this right now?
I'm not aware of that, meaning no, we have not specifically notified them at this point.
Where I'm going with that is they may have already budgeted that these funds would be coming in, even though the school's funding formula might change with that, but just recognizing that, I just think it's important that before a decision would be made, that they would be made aware sooner than later from a budgeting perspective. Outside of that, I think we've been working towards adding funding to our program to make sure we have an adequate balance. So it makes sense for us to continue doing so. We'll see how the fund goes here over the next year to 2 years. I don't know that we've had any requests yet.
No, not to this point.
So that being that we need to make sure we advertise this, that those funds are available and do what we can, maybe a better job with that. So general public knows it. But other than that, I would be in favor. Al? We might as well just go around the table here and see where people are at.
It's a lot of money, obviously. Now the other one wasn't quite as dramatic in the $350,000 or $350,000 or whatever the number was on the extension of the TID. And now we're talking a fairly sizable amount, which the question I have is the current program that we recommended to the board, I don't know if the board has approved it yet, but is that program worthy enough to receive up to $932,000 more money? And when we went through all the different programs by the various municipalities, they all had ancillary programs in addition to the ones similar to what we have. So is there something else we should be doing? In which case, should we be at the forefront of that and trying to come up with what else we're going to use the money for, as opposed to us getting the money and saying, okay, now figure something out. So the part I struggle with is the program that we have, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, Chris, is there any demand for that program that we currently have? And what is that demand? And is there enough money to meet that demand? Or if we put another $1 million into it, or whatever the number is, you know, is there enough strength in that program to use up what's there plus an additional $1 million? That's the part I struggle with.
Tyler?
Okay, I look at it a little differently. First of all, the jurisdictions that this affects, the amounts that they would receive are very small increments compared to what their total budgets are. And number two, we need to be looking into the future and have something to work with into the future. So I feel that this would give us something to work with and to look at other programs and other ways to use these funds.
Jeff?
Where does money go if we don't take it? This, I guess the question is mine. I don't know if we know that answer, but that would be what would help me to put a balance to it. That's one observation. The other observation is if you've done any contractor work lately, like we've got going in our house right now, it's all very expensive at this point. Materials are just crazy. So while $900,000 is a lot of money, is that 10 projects? You know, so I guess I'd be in favor of doing this, but I'd really like to know
Where those funds go back?
where it happens to them if we don't.
Yeah, we know where the funds go, how the jurisdictions use them. We can't say, but otherwise it just goes back into our general fund, correct? Renee?
For the village share, yes, it would just go back to the general fund.
So for the villages portion,
Right.
so you're on this new, it would be 222,000.
This is what we've been working for what, 4 years now, something like that. So I'd be in favor of it.
I guess a two-part question for me. Is it possible just to allocate the villages portion to this? If there were concerns, and maybe these other jurisdictions wanted to use it towards housing programs, I don't know, but not having asked that question, is it possible?
Well, I think a way it could be done is that we would, if that was what was desired by the board, we wouldn't do the affordable housing extension because then we would have to keep all the 775,000. But if we were to refund everybody and then the board somehow earmarked that or made a transfer, they could do a transfer from the general fund to the affordable housing fund of just that our share. That could be done, but yeah, it's kind of that would be a little bit different process.
More complicated, it sounds like.
Well, not real complicated, but right, we wouldn't directly take it from the TIF to the affordable housing fund for our share. It would have to flow through and we, basically have another resolution that the board would, if they wanted to use that 222,000 or whatever it is.
Okay, that makes
to move
sense.
that over.
So second part of that question then, and Tim, I apologize because I know you shared this with us before, but to help me remember, when would we expect another opportunity like this? Like, are we just saying this is for the next year? Is this now like a 5-year fund? Like when?
No, I think the next would be I think it's 2024, 2025 would be the next. I'm going from memory because I'm seeing that chart in my mind, but that's something I don't have off the top of my head, but I think it's like 24, 25.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Tim. Could you pull up maybe in your, do you have your, oh, you don't have your laptop? On our finance committee packet, it's in there.
I have it.
Oh, okay, so.
Well, I was
know,
gonna say,
I just didn't have that. with
TID
me today.
4 is soon to close, but that has a very small increment. I mean,
Excuse me.
some of them were definitely bigger than others, so.
Okay. So I guess that's the point, like this could end up being like a 3 to 4 year fund, like this isn't necessarily, we won't get this opportunity at this level for a while.
Not for this dollar amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that agree,
The
Al, with
biggest
what
one
we had?
is- I want to say 1 point, is it the Kilkenny one?
The Kilkenny one is the big one.
And that's down the road a bit.
2027 is projected to close.
So your 5 years is what you're talking about there, and that one is for almost 2 million? Or 1.3, 1.7, something like that.
Projected fund balance is 1.7 as of this writing.
Okay.
Which is the end of 22.
So.
Thanks.
We'll do that.
Let me back up. The increment for 22 is 1.3. The
Mhm.
fund balance is something different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely one of the larger ones, whereas 4, which is closing soon, within the next year or two, that has a pretty small amount.
Thank you.
Kristen?
Yeah, it does feel like a good opportunity right now, and we have been working towards this for a while. I would like to know, or we should inform the other jurisdictions, to see, if they have been counting on it, particularly the school district, given that they just went through a referendum for operating expenses. We would probably want to know that before making a decision.
So last thing I would say in favor of doing this is we're just at the scratch the surface with what our program is.
Mhm.
There's other things, and I guess we'll have to look and see what they could be used for. I think of, we have lower income wage earners that work in Waunakee that don't necessarily live in Waunakee. How can we help those folks in the business community? I know that people may not like that it's for the business community, but how do we get those people here? So maybe we have some sort of subsidized busing through this program to get employees here. I don't know if we can use it for that. You guys would have to check on it. But that might be an option for us, because it's one of the things that you guys will get to deal with coming up here more so. Finding employees, in the range of, your $12, $15, $20 an hour workers. It's hard to get those workers and how to get them here. So if this program could somehow, and I'm not saying we're 100% subsidizing something, it's something that maybe we discuss with the employers to say we'll be in for part of it, if what they're putting in for it, we can help maybe with that to offset some of that cost. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a larger, because that was one of the things we talked about, was we didn't have enough money to truly get into everything. This is starting to build that fund, and it's a good way for that fund to be built for decisions to be made. Further, we did kind of what we could with what we had available to us at that point. I think this just, it could expand now once we have these funds. And if this body doesn't think that we want to expand that, that's okay too. Just like if the board feels that way, we don't, that's what it
Make
is.
Another comment.
Yeah.
Another thought is that we have been subsidizing a business or a development for many, many years, and which has spurred the economy. But how far can the economy go if it doesn't have workers? And housing is important to get workers into the community. So I just see this as another way to spur the economy further.
So here's the part I struggle with, and I'm all for, the mission at hand here. I'm not convinced yet, because it's hard for me to say, build it and they'll come. We give you $1 million and you guys figure it out. I'm not, it's hard for me to understand that concept without saying, here's what we want to do with the $1 million and how we want to spend it, because absent everything being equal, our property taxes will go down by $1 million. Because all these people get, now, I know the village, and I know it goes to Dane County, but everything being equal, the property taxes would come down $1 million. And that's the intent of the TID, is eventually to make it where the increment adds and property taxes come in and everybody's happy. But we're extending it by 1 year and using that money for affordable housing. Well, the village can certainly say, no, we're going to close it. And we're going to allocate out of our general tax levy, $222,208 annually to a low-income housing project, or I want to use low-income, a housing fund. And it can certainly fund a portion of it, or all of it if it so chooses. And you mentioned that, Tricia, that's exactly what it can do if it wants to do that. But it's just, I'd like to say, yes, I can support the $1 million. I think we have a great plan, but $1 million of the program we have currently in place, I'm not sure it might be too much money for that program. And without something else already lined up, I struggle with that. And I probably alluded to that a number of times throughout our meetings. We need something bigger and better to keep this thing going.
With this, and again, I don't quite understand property tax allocations or how you get your property tax, but would that $1 million generate more property tax if the properties were improved? Was that a factor here?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a bit of an offset to that. It's not, certainly not the whole dollar amount, I wouldn't think. I don't know how that's assessed.
Yeah, and I understand all that, when a business puts $1 into the economy before it's done being spent, it's 7 times that. I understand all that concept. But from the village board's perspective, they're at some point going to have to agree, yes, we want to give $1 million, extend it for a year, put $1 million into the fund. And they have an accountability aspect at that point in time. What's it being used for? And I understand well what you're saying, that yes, you need workers that create businesses and all these things happen, but that's not today. That takes time for that to happen. So that's the part I struggle with. If I had a vision as to where this is going, I'd be better understanding of it. I just don't see where the answer is yet.
One quick question first now. Can we gain interest on these funds? Is there anything that
Yes, we're
prohibits us?
currently earning interest on what's the balance of approximately 157,000. So we would continue to earn interest, and that stays within the fund, can be used towards that.
So that's one of the other advantages
Yeah, and
here right
rates
now
are
is
pretty good right now.
where interest rates have gone, and with $1 million at 4 or 5%, that's all of a sudden $40,000-$50,000, which that's quick for us. So go ahead, Nyla.
Another point is it's taken, the CDA was created 3 years ago, approximately. It's taken 3 years to come up with the program that we have. If we try to have programs set up before the increments are available, we're going to be chasing our tail forever. I don't know how else to put it.
I think one of the things too of our next significant pot of money would be the 1.6 in 5 years, that $157,000 we have in there now. I don't think it's going to last us that long. I feel the same responsibility that I think you do, Al, that this is a lot of money and it's taxpayer dollars. And so we've got to be really responsible about what we do with it if we're going to be spending it. Yeah.
Because the counter argument to you, Jeff, is, as I mentioned earlier, that all things being equal, that property taxes would come down $1 million, in putting aside the jurisdictional barriers between the village and the county and all this kind of stuff. Our property taxes would come down $1 million. How many people are being priced out of their homes because of the increasing property taxes? And that's a way to subsidize the property taxes, by putting it back on the roll. It was successful, putting it where it belongs and bringing down the taxes.
Question to that, to clarify. It doesn't necessarily mean it would come down, correct? Like it would just be additional revenue source for all of these entities to use.
Remember, I said all things being equal. That assumes the budgets are equal and everything's equal, but for this one item.
Right. I'm just thinking that the odds of that actually happening, given the needs and the demands that are
Yeah,
out there.
because let's look at what happened with Verona with Epic. As soon as their TIF district was paid off, they had a referendum and they did a building project for the school. So all that increment that was accruing all that time, the school knew it was going to be done, so they got a referendum to the school, and it really didn't help taxpayers at all. It didn't lower their taxes.
I just counter that again with the fact that they're going to gain value on something that needs to be done in their home. And that they're going to gain that value, which potentially could be much higher than, I don't know. Again, I'm not a property tax expert, but could be higher than the impact of the property tax increase.
And I would agree on the program we have currently. I would agree on if it's in regards to repairs or maintenance or some physical addition to the property. However, we were also talking about grants being given out for down payments. We're giving out grants for other reasons. Those don't necessarily add to the property tax and continue the longevity of it.
Right.
All right, so I'm just gonna point out again what I said earlier. We've scratched the surface, and I don't necessarily disagree with Al in saying that we're kind of doing something and then figuring it out. We have till June to make that decision. Otherwise, it's kind of gone until 2027. Is that correct?
Or the date at which that next TID would come up with that smaller increment.
Right, which is small.
Yeah.
From what I understand. So, and I do think that Kristen's point that these funds could run out fast and we'd have to nothing then until 2027. And I think it's really important that this body in the future talks about the education of the public so the public is aware of these programs. We don't have a newspaper person sitting in here. We don't have a lot of literature going out to people, letting them know that this is out there. There's nothing posted that I'm aware of that tells people about this program. Is that fair to say right now?
Not yet.
So once all of that happens, I think you're going to see an uptick of potential usage of this. So that being said, the dollar amounts we talked about ad nauseum in regards to not having enough funding to do the things that we truly want to get to. We're scratching a little bit right now. We need to get a little bit more in depth. The board is going to weigh in on this. Obviously, there's 3 board members here. Starting in a couple weeks. Just to be clear, and they're going to make that decision as well. But I think the objective of the CDA was to come up with a program. And right now we have a short reaching program, and I think that you could evolve this into a far reaching program.
Right.
But like every other thing, funding is so critical. And I'm sitting here personally saying, all right, we have how much in right now? 157. And I look at that interest, Al, and say, all right, we have $1 million in there and we get 5%. We got $50,000 right away. We've got a third more just like that in a year. That's a big deal within the program. It's like seed money at that point, to be frank, or grant money that you're getting it there. You've got this net that's been put there by somebody. It'd be great if somebody just donated like $5 million and we had a program in place, but this is our way to get there. And you know what? In 4 or 5 years, when that other one comes up, this program might have grown like this, or it could be shrunk down. And I think that it's kind of a cool position that this body's in, because you're going to see what's going to happen in 5 years, and you'll know when that next one comes up, what to do. This is just giving the opportunity for that to take place.
And I can see nothing better for this program that we have in place to be successful. I think that's a real slap on the back in a positive sense for this committee. If the program does take off and we use that $157,000, I think that'd be real positive for us. So that's why I like it. I'm glad we did it, but I'd like to see something else.
And I would love to see that $50,000, hopefully, that we make an interest used for marketing it. Because that's part of the whole thing. Anything you do, getting it out there so the public is aware that it's there. There's so many things that are hidden. Our conservancy is a hidden gem of the community that people don't use, because where do you ever see something advertised about the conservancy? You don't, unless you go on village sites. And I don't think our traffic is like that high on the village sites going to our parks. So maybe it is and I'm wrong, but I don't think it is. So that's just how I feel about this. The more people know, the more educated they are on it, the more they're going to use it.
I was gonna piggyback on that because I think this group was very intentional in taking its time to deliberate, to make sure that it weighed various options and came up with a program that we felt was impactful with the amount of money that we had. Had we shortened it and not done sooner, this money might already be gone. The 157,000 if we, had, wrapped up. I don't want to say rushed through it because that's not the right terminology, because I think we did it the right way. But knowing that's maybe 10 projects, that's not going to last us the amount of time to have any impact whatsoever, I don't think.
Okay, with that said, any other, feedback from all of you as far as I think everybody's making really good points. There's nothing that's wrong that's being said right now. And that's what's great about this whole body as we've gone through this process is people have their opinions. We hear all the opinions and then we've made decisions. And I think that's the way things are supposed to get done. So with that, is there somebody that would like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve contingent upon notification of the other jurisdictions.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay, I'm going to ask just a clarification. The dependent upon notification to the other jurisdictions. Is it just notification to them or do we want their feedback? If their feedback comes back, no, are we still going through? That's the question I would have that. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
So just to, I guess to clarify, in my mind, my thought was that this matter, if moved forward, wouldn't be until May 1st for that reason, to get the feedback. And as part of the report going to the village board, that feedback would be included. And so the board members would know the degree to which those other taxing jurisdictions would be in favor or in support,
Okay.
or support or in opposition.
So the board makes the ultimate decision.
Right.
With
So
the
this would be a
feedback.
recommendation going to the village.
So
board.
maybe it should be an and, recommend moving forward and notify the
I would just
jurisdiction.
say pen, if you're okay with me saying.
You
something right
wordsmith me all you want.
Because the way it was stated, I'm saying pending notification of the other bodies for their feedback. Because we don't have to have, we can make the decision. They can't tell us what we can or can't do on this. We can make it. This is more going through the process to make sure they're aware. And if they do have objections, that we know why they have those objections. Is that
So moved.
okay?
So I'm still not understanding. So, and I think I'm in agreement with this, I think.
Okay,
That is, we don't need them to say yea or nay necessarily. The process, they will find out that it's standard. There's nothing we need to proactive, like the process itself will tell.
It's a courtesy.
correct.
You want to do a courtesy.
Right.
This is a courtesy to those other taxing jurisdictions. So let's just say the school district says we had that $407,000 and it was figured in and we need that money here. It's going to be, they may have that objection, which we still could say, sorry, this is part of that. Possible that we could say that. I'm saying we would. It's just, it's giving the courtesy off to them to get their feedback. It's government bodies working together versus we're saying, we're being the bad guy and just saying in your face, you're going to take this, we're doing it. So. All right. Any other comments? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did we have a second? If I did, I didn't get
I
it.
seconded it.
Thank you, Nyla.
All right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I don't know if Jeff, they got yours because you're still red,
Well,
but
he was here for the directions.
Aye.
okay, Jeff is an aye too. We got it on camera. So, okay. And with that,
Well, we had an agenda.
that is it for the agenda this evening. So then we did one more motion. I'll make it then. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everybody.
Discriminatory.